And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join me, Anaya Falar and Iman, for the discussion every Sunday at 3 p.m. here. From big ideas to questions shaping the public conversation, we tackle the moral, cultural and political implications of news stories.
We need to share this conversation democratically.
It has become so toxic, this debate.
They relish this kind of discourse.
From fascinating guests to challenging ideas, you won't want to miss it. The discussion every Sunday at 3 p.m. here, GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to those of you watching on TV and those listening on DAB. This is Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes. On the show today, I'll be asking, as Liz Truss stands up to Vladimir Putin, is Britain still a big player on the world stage, especially post-Brexit? But I want to hear from you. What do you think makes Great Britain great? But first, it's the news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Darren. It's exactly 2 o'clock. The Russian foreign minister has accused the US and EU of ignoring his country's proposals on security. In a phone call with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Sergei Lavrov said Washington was waging a propaganda campaign about possible Russian aggression. Mr. Blinken has since tweeted that any Russian aggression would be met with a resolute, massive and united transatlantic response. Later today, President Joe Biden is expected to speak to his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. Former Defense Secretary Sir Nicholas Soames says it's looking increasingly likely that Russia will strike.
Very important that diplomacy is given every chance, but it looks to me as though President Putin is imminently awaiting to do one of probably three things. I mean, I think he could either withdraw his troops, he could force a corridor, which he would quite like to do probably down from Ukraine into the Crimea, or he could launch a full-scale invasion. But if he does, he will pay a terrible price.
Boris Johnson will not lose his focus on the Ukraine crisis despite being sent a police questionnaire about lockdown parties. That's according to Junior Defence Minister James Heappey. He says the Prime Minister will stay focused on leading the international response and continue to attend National Security Council and COBRA meetings. The Metropolitan Police have contacted more than 50 people believed to have attended the parties, asking them to explain their involvement or face fines. The PM has denied hide any wrongdoing. A British journalist held by the Taliban for several days in Afghanistan has finally been released. Andrew North was reporting on the country's humanitarian crisis for the United Nations Refugee Agency. Meanwhile, friends of a second British man detained by the Taliban have pleaded for his release. Peter Juvenal was visiting Afghanistan for business and family reasons. He's been held since early December. Experts from SAGE are warning that lifting all COVID restrictions will have a disproportionate impact on vulnerable people. It follows the Prime Minister's announcement that restrictions will end soon, including the need to self-isolate following a positive test. SAGE has also raised concerns about the consequences of removing access to free testing and called for clear and consistent messaging to the public about the ongoing risks. A charity is warning there's a hidden mental health crisis for older people, with millions having lost the confidence to leave their homes. Age UK says the pandemic has had an alarming impact on the elderly, who are now experiencing anxiety, memory loss and disturbed sleep. The charity is urging friends and relatives of older people to reach out and encourage them to ask for help if they're struggling. A court of arbitration panel will decide by Monday if Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva's Winter Olympics will be allowed to continue after she tested positive for a banned heart drug. The 15-year-old prodigy became the first woman to land a quadruple jump at the Olympics on Monday, winning a team figure skating gold. She's now scheduled to compete in the singles on Tuesday. If sent home, Valieva would be one of the youngest athletes ever removed from the Olympics for doping. French police say they've now intercepted 500 vehicles from so-called freedom convoys seeking to enter Paris. Inspired by the ongoing events in Canada, protesters are demonstrating against COVID-19 restrictions. France has mobilised thousands of police, set up checkpoints and riot control barriers to keep out the convoys. So far, more than 300 motorists have been handed tickets. Meanwhile, at least 2 protesters have been detained in one central Parisian square. They were found to be in possession of knives and hammers. OK, this is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now back to Real Britain with Darren Grimes.
Welcome to Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes, where our main topic of the afternoon is whether or not Britain is a major player in the world after Brexit. Here's what's coming up on the show. Every weekend on Real Britain, we like to hear from the real people who make this country great. I've been speaking to people in Durham, my patch, to see what makes Great Britain great. There'll be a grilling from Grimes this afternoon too. The Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosendale, will be first in the hot seat to face a range of quick-fire questions. And we'll be going back to basics. With Cressida Dick's resignation this week as top cheese in the Met Police, I'll be asking what actually is the job of the Metropolitan Police Commissioner. And as always, this show is absolutely nothing without you. I want to know, what do you think makes Great Britain great? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Now, the spectacle of Sir John Major, the man who spit an image painted as the dullest shade of grey possible, whose contemporary claim to fame is that he was one of Edwina Currie's lovers, as his years as Prime Minister from 1990 to 1997 remain largely forgotten, when we crashed out, let's not forget, of the exchange rate mechanism. The man humiliated our nation, causing severe economic pain, losing Margaret Thatcher's massive majority and handing Europhile Tony Blair a super majority. Well, Sir John has taken it upon himself to be the top Remain-backing loser, who bashes Boris at every opportunity he gets. And all I can say, folks, is if Boris Johnson is a flawed Prime Minister, I guess the adage takes one to know one, pet, is very much at play here. There's a coalition in this country made up of the mainstream media and the left who are doing everything they can to undermine Britain at every chance. Take Diane Abbott and Jeremy Corbyn, the gruesome twosome, questioning if Russia is the real aggressor in Ukraine and blaming NATO for the escalating situation. There were many sneering and sanctimonious tweets seeking to damage Foreign Secretary Liz Truss by parroting the lines of Russia's Foreign Affairs Chief, Sergei Lavrov. These people despise the Tory party, and the government, frankly, is making it easy for them. It appointed Jacob Rees-Mogg as Brexit Opportunities Minister. Now, I like Jacob, but it had him ask for the public's thoughts. If that, to me, right, suggests that they don't have any of their own ideas for Brexit and haven't been delivering on tailor-made domestic regulations that would actually better serve the British economy. And I tell you, man, I'm bored to tears of people talking this country down and the government giving them the tools with which to do it. Since that vote for Brexit, there's been a constant attrition from those who campaigned against the vote to find any news item, any scrap of negative press to paint a picture of this country as one on its knees. An attempt to tell us that what we have in this country, frankly, isn't worth a damn. To argue that without the EU holding our hand, we've somehow been diminished as a nation. Manufacturing in this country is often seen as a dead industry, painted as such in much of the media, but actually, we're a production powerhouse. We employ 2.7 million people, which is responsible for 44% of our global exports, worth over 273 billion quid, making the UK the 9th largest manufacturer in the world by output. And we're at the forefront of much of the latest tech. Little old Blighty is the cool kid on the block, with new opportunities emerging in the manufacturing of electric cars and other green technologies. Look at what we managed to do, folks, with that vaccine rollout. So fast have we forgotten, almost as fast as it was rolled out. And this week, there was a significant breakthrough in nuclear fusion power, with this country breaking the world record for energy harnessed from the process in one go at a plant housed here in Oxfordshire. And our economy, far from making a little England, grew by 7.5% in 2021 to reach its fastest level of growth since the Second World War. A success no doubt secured by releasing the nation from the constraints of lockdown faster than most others. We ought to remind the sneering Ramonas that investment and companies didn't scramble for the lifeboats post-Brexit. Far, far from it. Britain was great before we joined the EU and will remain so long after leaving it. What makes us great, that we don't hear frankly enough about, is our history, our values, our cultural exports, our world-beaten financial markets, our language, and the soft power superpower that is the British monarchy. What other head of state, ours for a marvellous 7 decades, would be able to say that she has the insight that stretches from Churchill all the way to Johnson? What other head of state could address the nation during moments of pride, moments of national mourning, or moments of emergency with the same cut-through as our selfless and apolitical monarch? We're a great country. I make no apology in saying that. Absolutely none. We've given the world so much and will continue to offer the world so much more. But I'm bored of the Brexit bitterness and the Boris bashing. It's time to get Britain bouncing and bodacious Boris back to brilliance. So that was my thoughts about Britain's position in the world post-Brexit. Earlier in the week, I put this topic to people in the northeast of England. Have a listen to what they had to say. We're here in Durham to find out if people are proud to be British. At this post-Brexit moment, what is it that makes us so great around the world? Let's find out.
I'm proud to be British. I'm proud to live in a country where we've got the NHS and we've got the support from the government in the way that people view it. So I would say I'm proud to be British and I'm proud to live in a country that we're in.
Yeah, I am proud to be British, yeah.
Why?
Well, I think that as every British person, there's a sort of national spirit that's in all of us. I think no matter the ideological position of our government, we've still got to be loyal to one another.
Are you proud to be British?
I'd probably say no, to be honest. I wouldn't say I'm exactly proud. No.
And why is that?
I think the history and all the things that as a collective country that the government and previous governments and everything that has happened, especially to other nations and things, I think it's nothing to exactly be proud of. And there are things to be proud of, such as, music, for example. There's been a lot of good things regarding things like that, but ultimately I don't think there's much to be proud of.
People, history, the culture of the country, the strong laws and equality, general decency of people, people trying to be kind to one another, and I think it's the character of people that make a country great, not institutions.
Some people have said actually Britain should be ashamed of its past, for example. Would you agree with those sentiments?
I disagree with the word ashamed. There's things in our past now that I'm very sad about, and I think are regretful that these are the things that the country did. But this is what happened at the time, and I think the thing that needs to be done now is that people need to be taught about the past in a balanced way, and I feel it's not very balanced at the moment. I think there's a great wish amongst a lot of people to try and bring the country down for political reasons, and I think they're using the past as a weapon to beat the country over the head with. So I think teaching children about the good and the bad equally is the way forward.
Everything's here, everything's looked after, you've got the NHS, everything you require is here. It's all, if you go abroad, you have to pay for most things, this is spot on.
Plus the fact 99% of the people are good.
Friendly, talkative.
I don't know whether I really see being British as a set of values or as a unifying feature in my life. I feel like I feel more closely connected to my family, to my friends, to people who do the same kind of hobbies as me. I don't know whether Britishness is really the thing that I think of as being really important to my identity, to be honest.
So some people would say that the Union Jack, for example, represents around the world freedom, democracy, tolerance and all of these other things. Would you agree with that?
Well, other people would say it represents colonialism and imperialism, so I think that's a controversial thing to say. I think that it doesn't necessarily represent what it used to, and I think that increasingly today people are recognising that it has been used as a symbol of power and a symbol of British strength over other nations in a way that it shouldn't have been, and that's not right.
Hey, I bet that lasts at the end. There's fun at a party. That was the brilliant people of Durham telling me what they think about Great Britain. A wide range of opinion, I'm sure you'll agree. It's now time for Aman Bogle. Now, I want to hear from you this afternoon as well. Let's spread positivity. What makes Britain great? Email me on gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Now, more about the question of Britain's standing in the world post-Brexit. Aman Bogle is the founder and chairman of Global Britain Centre, and he joins me now. Aman, you're from the Global Britain Centre. Thank you very much for joining me. But are we now viewed as an independent trading nation? That was much of the promise of Brexit, wasn't it?
Absolutely, Darren. Thanks for having me on your show. And may I say, look, Global Britain has immense amount of goodwill around the world that still remains to be tapped. And the truth is, Global Britain is a synonym for free democracies, free trade and free enterprise.
You agree with that lady at the end there, that actually Britain should be apologetic for its past and we should actually look down on much of what's taken place throughout our history. For example, you're a big champion of trade with India. Do you think actually we should be paying reparations to a country like India?
Well, of course not. I think it would be quite insulting to our Indian friends. Look, India today is a very confident country that is standing on its own 2 feet. And with a population of 1.4 billion, 500 million of which are actively learning how to speak English and engage with the wider world. I think India is a confident nation today, which is very happy to be in the place it is. And they look at us as people, as a nation to stand shoulder to shoulder with, not to seek reparations from.
Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg was appointed to a ministerial role this week for Brexit opportunities. How important do you think that position is and the success for Britain's future, frankly? Do you actually think the government has seized the opportunities as much as you would like to see?
Well, look, the pandemic has thrown a spanner in the works for many people around the world in terms of getting on with building a brighter future for all of us. However, I think with Jacob there now with the benefits of Brexit, getting things done, again, even despite the pandemic, I think we've seen global Britain really rise up to the challenges we have faced over the last 2 years. Look, be it the Gavi COVAX initiative, which Britain has led with the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, for example, again, partnering with a new India, investing hundreds of millions of pounds to deliver the vaccines that were needed in the places that were needed the most. Look at what the UK did when the terrible scenes we saw in Tonga a few weeks ago. We dispatched HMS Spade to work with our partners and allies, the Australians and the New Zealanders, and look at what we're doing in Ukraine. Global Britain is leading the charge for free democracy. The rest of Europe, sadly, is nowhere to be seen. In fact, they've been blocking the likes of Estonia and the Baltic states coming to the help of our friends in Ukraine. It is Global Britain that has stood up to be counted. And even if you look at what happened in Hong Kong, the Union flag was seen as an icon of freedom, of hope, and we saw it being flashed everywhere across those protests in Hong Kong when they were going on. So look, Global Britain is not just here to stay, but it's already doing a lot.
Now, some would say, well, hang on a minute, because we've got businesses here in this country. On Wednesday, for example, the Public Accounts Committee said that new border arrangements have added severe costs to businesses of all sizes. What would you actually say to those who say Brexit has been a disaster for small and medium enterprise?
Well, look, the idea is to make sure that we can have our own regulations, set our own standards and rules, to make sure that we, our people, our MPs, our Parliament is in charge of making those rules. Now, of course, getting all that in place may cause a short-term confusion. Well, confusion for what? Confusion for whom? I see trade, that is, we are, look, G7, in the G7, we are the fastest growing economy again, 7.5% last year. Now, how has that come along? That has come along, including all those checks that have come in, including all the new opportunities that have come in with Brexit. Look at the number of jobs that have been created in the UK over the course of the pandemic. There are more people in jobs now than there were before the pandemic. And all those things have happened with Brexit happening. So all those people who say that Brexit is creating confusion or is creating hurdles, I would say no, the facts speak otherwise. And the people who are in more jobs, who have the security of a pay packet coming home now, well, they realize that and they see through it.
So, Aman, really briefly, is Boris still the right man to make Great Britain greater still?
Well, look, Global Britain is Boris's vision. He campaigned for it during the referendum campaign. He campaigned for it in the election that he got a stonking majority of 80. And he's the man to do it. He's well respected around the world. Look, over the last year, during the pandemic itself, he signed the 2030 10-year roadmap with Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India. And that's a 10-year roadmap that was signed by Modi with Boris. It was signed because Boris is the Prime Minister. He has the vision to get it done. He got Brexit done. And now I'm sure with everything going forward, as the first country coming out of the pandemic, we're going to make sure that Global Britain is here to stay.
Aman Singh Bogal, you are the founding chairman of Global Britain Centre. Thank you very much for speaking to me this afternoon. Now, there's plenty more to come this afternoon on Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes. There'll be a grilling from Grimes coming up shortly. Conservative MP Andrew Rosendale joins me here in the studio for some quick-fire questions. But first, let's have a little look at the weather.
OK, looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy and breezy for most, with rain continuing to spread eastwards. Let's take a look at the details. A front sits across the southwest this evening, so you can expect a damp evening there. A little calmer though, still unpleasant at times on the moors, particularly during heavier downpours. Further east, after a relatively dry day, rain will start to affect many parts of the southeast, though it will be largely light. Over in South Wales, after a rather wet day, the rain will ease for a time and it will turn a little calmer as well. Over in the Midlands next, and it'll be a mixed picture there, cloudy and breezy for many, with rain continuing at first, though it will likely turn a little drier by night time, staying mild too. Moving further north, where things stay rather windy in the northeast of England this evening, with a mix of clear spells and showery rain that may be quite heavy in times as well as being unpleasant. Now, even further north to South Scotland, where it will be changeable this evening. Expect some heavy and blustery showers at times, but also the odd clear and colder spell. Finally, let's look at the details for Northern Ireland. It'll turn a bit calmer and drier for many, though once again short-lived and heavy showers will push through. For the rest of the night, things will change again as more heavy rain and gusty winds will push up from the south. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Start off your GB News Sunday with Stephen and Anne at breakfast from 6 a.m. At 10, Michael Portillo joins the political correction. From 12 till 6, it's Alistair, Darren and Nana. At 7, join Free Speech Nation for a laugh that won't be cancelled. At 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight, followed by Headliners. That's Sunday on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
and I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, this afternoon marks my first Grilling from Grimes. I'll be joined in the studio by someone in a position of power, and I'll ask them as many questions as we can squeeze in 5 minutes. In just a moment, we'll be speaking to the Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosendale. His animal rights bill, which would see animal abusers prosecuted, is being heard in the House of Lords right now. And with the shocking footage that we all saw, I'm sure you saw it and were shocked and outraged as much as I was, of West Ham defender Kurt Zouma kicking his pet cat. And we have to, I'm afraid, start there. Now, Andrew Rosendale joins me now. Andrew, thank you so much for coming into the studio.
Thanks, Darren.
Now, Kurt Zouma, he's been fined the maximum amount possible by West Ham, with the fee being donated to animal welfare charities. The RSPCA have taken the 2 cats, and the player has apologised. He'll attend animal care courses organised by the RSPCA. What further action would you like to see, and what would your bill ensure was actually taken?
Well, I think we're all terribly shocked to see any animal being treated in that way. We are a nation of animal lovers. And to see someone who's so prominent behave that way to a harmless creature is quite shocking and vile. And he should be prosecuted. And under my bill, which hopefully will become law, it means he can be very severely fined. But of course, under existing law, he can also be prosecuted. So depending on how serious the offence is, my bill can deal with minor issues, or current law can deal with more serious matters. But either way, he should be prosecuted. There has to be a deterrent for people that harm innocent creatures.
What would you say to those that say, well, I agree with you completely, I think what he did was absolutely outrageous and I certainly wouldn't do it myself. But then they say, well, I was mugged in the streets of London and the police didn't investigate any, crime there or find out who actually did it.
Yes.
And they're saying, is this really a priority for the police when they're overstretched as much as they are?
Right, so you make a really good point. We're all very frustrated sometimes with the police and the fact that they don't get to grips with the crime. I actually want the police to be crime fighters. I don't care what crime it is, but I don't want them to be social workers and I don't want them to get involved in politics. Too much politics goes on in the police, and I think we need a change in the culture of the police, particularly in the Met here in London. I want the police to make the streets safe and make people feel safe in their own country rather than get dragged into politics and issues that they shouldn't be involved with.
So what would your message be to David Moyes and to West Ham, who are potentially playing Mr Zuma tomorrow in a match?
Oh, they should withdraw him. They should keep him away from football for a very long time. He has to be made an example of, I'm afraid. If you behave like that, if anyone behaves like that in public life and harms an animal, then really they need to be made an example of.
We mentioned police in there. Priti Patel's going to have to make some pretty big decisions about the chopped cheese of the Met Police. As far as law and order is concerned, and as far as certainly the English Channel crisis, I bet you're hearing a lot of your constituents say, where's the Conservative Party in all of this?
Oh, Darren, you're completely correct. And I've spoken to Priti directly. I actually think Priti is doing the very best she can do, but there's two problems. Number one, she's got the Home Office establishment trying to drag her down. They're trying to derail what she's trying to do. She wants to get on with the job, but there's an establishment there that seems to want to trip her up. Secondly, we've got a thing called the Human Rights Act. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Wonderful piece of legislation that Mr Blair brought in. Well, that stops us from doing so many things that we need to do to tackle this issue. So I've called for Boris to get rid of the human rights. Let's have a British Bill of Rights, which, of course, upholds human rights, but does it that suits the United Kingdom. We're not bound by the European courts, which is something that I think we need to try to extract ourselves from.
Speaking of, you were a proud Brexiteer, still are proud Brexiteer. But we've just seen Jacob Rees-Mogg made Brexit Opportunities Minister, he'll attend Cabinet. Why has it taken so long? Why now? You know, we're in 2022 now, the referendum was in 2016.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about exploiting the opportunities of Brexit now? What's taken them so long?
Darren, good question. I'll tell you what I think we should do. We should use the majority we've got to sit day and night to repeal bad laws, have a bonfire of legislation and regulations. I don't care if we sit all the way through the weekend, all night long. We should use the majority we've got. Boris needs to get this message. We've got a huge opportunity to do things. We need to be bold as a party and as a government. Brexit gives us magnificent opportunities to do wonderful things for our country. But we're not using that opportunity at the moment. If anyone can do it, I think it'll be Jacob. I'm really pleased he's got that job. But we have a majority. Let's make something of that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Now, the main issue, the main topic of the day, I'm sure you'll agree, is the Foreign Office actually warning that British nationals in Ukraine ought to actually come home whilst commercial flights are still available. Would you argue, actually, that all of these conversations that we've been having over the past week about Boris potentially drinking a bottle of Prosecco, or Boris having a slice of cake, or Boris doing this, Boris doing that, I'm so fed up of all of this. We should be talking about the facts that we're potentially seeing the very start of World War III, surely. That's more important than Bozza tucking in to a slice of cake.
I'm afraid that I've come to the conclusion that the people that are having a go at Boris because he had a bit of birthday cake, they've got an agenda. And I warn my colleagues in the parliamentary party to be careful of this. They've got an agenda to drag our Prime Minister out of Number 10, and a lot of the people behind it are rabid Ramonas who cannot bear Boris because he did the right thing for our country, got us out of the European Union. They want to drag him down. So those people that voted for Brexit, be careful of attacking Boris. He's the one person that actually wants Brexit to work. And if they get him out of Downing Street and replace him with someone who might be softer, I think that we could finish up having a Brexit that we didn't vote for in 2019. We got a huge majority to get Brexit done properly. It's not finished yet, I have to say. Northern Ireland is unfinished business. That needs to be sorted quickly. We cannot let the people of Northern Ireland down, and we've done so over that. He needs to get that sorted out. But I have confidence that Boris will genuinely do this job. I'm afraid to say that Heseltine, you know, remember that man who dragged our greatest Prime Minister out of number 10 and ruined our party for many decades. He's again on manoeuvres. We know that he wants Boris out because he sees the opportunity of then undoing Brexit.
Yeah, well, the theme of the show today has been very much around what makes Great Britain great. In a nutshell, what would you say actually does make this country great?
Well, I'm tempted to say GB News.
Well, there we are.
Because it's greater than the BBC.
End the show, that's it.
Greater than the BBC any day of the week. But I'll tell you what I think. What motivates me, Darren, and I joined the Conservative Party when I was 14, been a young Conservative and loved what the Conservative Party has always stood for, because I believe it's a party that stands up for Britain. And I think what makes Britain great is our love of freedom. We are a freedom-loving people. When other countries are obedient to things that are not so good, we stand up strong. And Brexit was an example of that. We believe in freedom, freedom of the individual, freedom of choice, freedom of speech. And freedom runs through our veins all the way since the Magna Carta all those years ago. It's embedded in the Anglo-Saxon people. And I think the Conservative Party has to be the party that stands up for freedom. And Margaret Thatcher, as Prime Minister, always said that freedom is what drove her, and her motto was cherish freedom. And I have the same view, as I know you do.
Well, perfect. Andrew Rosendale, thank you very much for your time today. Now, Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosendale there. Now, you're with GB News on TV and DAB radio. Coming up, we're going back to basics. With Cressida Dick resigning this week, we'll be looking at the role of Met Police Commissioner. Now it's time for a check on the headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Darren. It's 2:33. President Joe Biden will speak to his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin today. That's as the United States evacuates non-emergency staff from its embassy in Ukraine's capital, Kiev. Meanwhile, Russia's foreign minister has also spoken to his US counterpart and said the West has ignored his country's proposals on security. The Metropolitan Police has given the Prime Minister just 7 days to explain his attendance at an event held at number 10 during COVID restrictions or face a fine. Downing Street confirmed last night that Mr Johnson had received a legal questionnaire from officers and will respond. The Prime Minister is alleged to have been at up to 6 of the 12 events being investigated as part of Operation Hillman. He's denied any wrongdoing. The Taliban have released Andrew North, a British journalist they'd been holding for several days in Afghanistan. He'd been on assignment for the UN Refugee Agency, reporting on the country's humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, friends of a second British man, Peter Juvenal, detained by the Taliban since early December, have pleaded for his release. Experts from SAGE are warning that lifting all COVID restrictions will have a disproportionate impact on vulnerable people. It follows the Prime Minister's announcement that restrictions will end soon, including the need to self-isolate following a positive test. SAGE has also raised concerns about the consequences of removing access to free testing. French police have now intercepted 500 vehicles from so-called freedom convoys seeking to enter Paris. Inspired by the ongoing events in Canada, protesters are demonstrating against COVID-19 restrictions. France has set up checkpoints and issued over 300 motorists with tickets. On TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Real Britain with Darren Grimes will be back in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So I wanted you to tell me what makes Great Britain great. And you certainly haven't held back. You are almost as gobby as I am. David says, an endeavour and entrepreneurialism gave us a great history, but equality and diversity agendas are destroying these by suppressing quality and excellence. Jessica says, what's not to love about Great Britain? We love an underdog, look after each other. I was proud to live in my street during the pandemic. And we've Cadbury's Dairy Milk. I couldn't agree with that one more. Lee says, I'm very proud to be British and I take every chance to show that I am. I even have the flag out in my house. Good for you. We, the people of Britain, should be very proud of what we do and who we are, he says. Now, folks, Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick has been all over the news recently after a forced resignation. But do you actually know, because I certainly don't, what her job actually entails? I need a refresher and I've got just the bloke to do it. To find out more, we're joined by Dr. Rakib Ahsan from the Henry Jackson Society in our Back to Basics virtual classroom. Hi, Rakib. Now, Rakib, could you just start by telling us briefly, what is the Metropolitan Police Commissioner? What are they responsible for?
So the Met Police Chief, interestingly, they have London-based responsibilities, but they're combined with certain national responsibilities as well, Darren. So these are responsibilities associated with counter-terrorism policing, providing protection for the royal family and senior members of the UK government. Now, in terms of the position and who that particular individual is accountable to. This is where it gets a bit complicated, Darren, if truth be told, because they can be directly accountable to the Home Secretary, who currently is Priti Patel, but they're also accountable to the Mayor of London, who's Sadiq Khan. And as you know, they belong to two different political parties. So you can see there, when it comes to that accountability model, it becomes somewhat muddled.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because they've both got to agree with each other, haven't they, on the next candidate? So that's when it starts to get, are we going to see just weeks and weeks, months potentially, of upheaval with Cressida Dick actually ending up staying in office because Sadiq Khan can't agree with Priti Patel?
Well, I think that interesting thing is that there's already a degree of tension between the two, the Home Secretary and the Mayor of London. The Home Secretary felt that she was somewhat kept out of the loop in this meeting that was arranged between the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and Cressida Dick. So you can already see that there's tensions there between the two, and this is the really interesting point where the preferences of a Conservative Home Secretary can be very different. Can be very different to the preferences of a Labour Party Mayor of London, a Mayor of London who belongs to the Labour Party. So I think that it's very difficult for whoever's appointed in the role to replace Dame Cressida Dick. How do they straddle those two horses when it comes to matters of crime and policing?
Yeah, and going back a step, why was it that Cressida Dick was so heavily criticised? Because, you know, people wax lyrical on everything from the knife crime to when we had that vigil for Everard in Clapham. She was heavily criticised for the policing, the stance on policing then. Why has that all led to her standing down? And why has Sadiq Khan decided, actually, I've had enough, this is it, she's out?
Well, I think that there have been a number of high-profile incidents, Darren. I think there's been a great deal of controversy surrounding the policing of protests. It's very interesting that people from various ideological schools, the one thing that brings them all together is the belief that the Met are not policing demonstrations and protests in a fair way. I think that some of the cases that you've referred to, such as the murder of Sarah Everard, there was also a case where inappropriate images were taken of the murdered bodies of sisters Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman, and then that was shared on WhatsApp, and that was reportedly to be shared with sexist and degrading language. So you can see that these high-profile scandals, they really have served to undermine public confidence in the Met.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying, aren't they? I've just had Andrew Rosendale on, MP for Romford, and he's been talking about how a lot of his constituents, and I hear this time and time again, where people are saying, actually, the police aren't doing their job at the minute. They're more interested in whackery and wokery than they are in law and order. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
I think it's a reasonable criticism. I think, interestingly, much policing activity, it reflects the worst of two very different worlds. You have that kind of sort of old school misogyny combined with this almost performative, modern, woke radicalism, which is quite an astonishing combination, what I'd consider to be a very toxic mixture, which does have the potential to undermine public confidence in the police and the job that it's doing. And I do feel that whoever's appointed in the role of Met Police Chief and replaces Dame Cressida Dick, that they have a great deal to sort out, whether that's improving police-community relations. Traditionally, Darren, women tend to have a high level of trust and confidence in the police than men. Now, I'm not sure whether that's still the case after some of the cases, some of the high-profile scandals that we've already discussed. So there's a great deal for whoever is appointed into the role to sort out. And as I said, they also have counter-terrorism policing responsibilities. And on that front, there is a great deal that needs to be done.
And on that point then, you mentioned the counter-terrorism point there. That obviously has a national impact, part of a national picture. How powerful and influential is the new Met Police Commissioner going to be? And why should we, you know, this is GB News, why should we as a nation be concerned about, or rather give regard to, the appointment that will be eventually hopefully made?
Well, I think the one point that I would make, Darren, is that in the counter-terrorism space, like other spheres of British life, I do feel that there is a degree of political correctness and identity politics, which is interfering with public authorities doing the bread and butter, you could say, and fulfilling their basic responsibilities. Whoever's appointed in the role of Met Police Chief, replacing Dame Cressida Dick, they have to be very firm in their view that the principal terror threat facing the UK is Islamist extremism, and that has to be reflected in counter-terrorism policing activities. And there is no room for political correctness when it comes to addressing the principal terror threat. And as I said, it's an important national responsibility for that whoever is positioned as Met Police Chief, and it's really important that they really get to grips with what local communities want when it comes to policing and maximising public safety and getting away from almost this sort of identitarian activity which has the potential to actually undermine public safety.
Dr. Rakib-Hassan, thank you very much. That's certainly given me a lot of food for thought, and that refresher, I think, was well worth watching. Thank you very much. It's now 2:46, and I want you to remember when someone complained on Twitter here that about an NHS service, and a Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, replied saying, "Show some respect." I think it's symbolised for me, folks, the almost religious, it's a very pious deference we are meant to show to our country's National Health Service. But in light of recent news, folks, that the NHS has an unimaginably high treatment backlog due to the government's lockdown policy, that go-to lockdown strategy, for this week's Scrap Reform Keep, so I'll be deciding if I agree with today's guests, I'm daring to go where others dare not. This week's topic, folks, is the NHS itself. Should we scrap reform or keep the NHS? Eamon Butler is the director of the Adam Smith Institute, and he joins me now. Eamon, thank you very much for your time today. Now, the NHS, as I just said, is often sort of it's regarded as a deity, frankly, in this country. It's said it's the #1 health service in the world. So why would we possibly want to either reform or indeed scrap it?
Well, it's definitely not the #1 in the world. Ask anybody in any other country, they're actually amazed of our system. Your survival rates for cancer, for example, are very much higher anywhere else in Northern Europe. Breast cancer survival is 10% higher in America. Stomach cancer is twice as high even in South Korea, for goodness sake. Lung cancer survival is 5 times higher in Japan. You know, we're doing something very wrong, and we're spending an awful lot of money doing so. We spend twice as much on the NHS as we do on education. So, you know, that's a tenth of the national income is going on this thing. And I think what we've got is a huge, big, old-fashioned nationalised monopoly. I'm not sure. I'd love to think you could reform it, but I'm not sure you can do it.
Well, if we're saying reform there, do you think that part of the problem is actually that the NHS has become too much of a COVID health service rather than a healthcare service? And that's the reason why we're failing to treat those who have cancer and require scans and all the rest of it? Or is this part of a problem that runs much deeper and has been going on, frankly, since before I was probably put on this planet, Eamon?
Well, I certainly wouldn't, decry the NHS for COVID. I mean, it was faced with a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, and it's not surprising that mistakes were made and all the rest of it. But you are right. The private sector has responded to the COVID epidemic famously, actually, and the supermarkets have stayed open, and restaurants and pubs, as far as they can, have stayed open, and lots of other services, essential services, have stayed open. And the NHS is, and education as well, schools as well, they closed down. And they found all sorts of reasons why they couldn't do things, rather than the sort of go-to and let's do and let's solve this problem. So now we're facing, the Health Secretary says, waiting list of possibly 13 million. It's going to take years to clear that. So, we need some radical action.
Yeah, well, then on that, to end, Eamon, what would you actually say? Are we going scrap, are we going reform, or are we going keep as far as the NHS is concerned?
I'd love to reform it, but we've tried reforming it before. We tried under Mrs. Thatcher. Blair tried to reform it. And as soon as you do that, the waters just close over again, and it becomes the same old bureaucratic nightmare. And we've got to have a health service that's focused on patients, not focused on bureaucracy, and not focused on politicians. So I'd love to say reform. I think it's going to be scrap.
Well, I mean, scrap. A lot of people, Eamon, I'm no doubt we're going to get flooded with emails. So thank you very much for your insight. That's Eamon Butler, the director of the Adam Smith Institute. Now, to finish the show, we've got Campus Clash now, where we've got 2 students who come into the show to debate a pressing matter. And this week, we're asking the question that I've just debated at the Cambridge Union. Do we need a monarchy? Now, I'm joined by Afzal Pervez, who's the Commonwealth Youth Leader, and Emmeline McClellan, who was actually on the opposing side at Cambridge, and she's a Master of Philosophy in Classics at the university. Now, I'm going to give you 30 seconds for each question. Do we need a monarchy? Afzal, I'll start with you first.
Thanks, Darren. I think, of course, we need a monarchy. Why, change a system that's not broken? What's the need to fix it? We've had it for 1,000 years. It's a matter of national identity, national pride. It's financially stable. It enables a rule of democracy. So I don't see why we should change the system now and potentially risk ourselves for instability, for potential corruption, and for changes that we possibly don't need in this day and age.
Perfect. Emmeline, why, you've got the sort of zeal, the American zeal there of republicanism. Why do you think actually we should copy our American cousins and actually say, well, you got it right all those years ago when you became a republic?
Well, I think that there's something beautifully democratic about having a republic and a president, because the idea is that anybody can become the national figurehead. And so the president is not so much a unifying symbol as in we rally around a person, but we rally around the idea that democracy opens up the chance for success to everyone, and that everyone has a chance to pursue the American dream and to be successful and to become the president if they wish.
Now, Emily, what about the sums of revenue which the royal family actually make and put into the treasury through, dare I say it, American tourism?
Well, perhaps it would be possible to have both and to have the Queen become, say, a less political figure, and to have her be more, I guess attached to the revenue side of things, but to have a president who actually takes over the foreign policy side, visits, the diplomacy and all of that, and to have maybe the prime minister be more separate from the legislature and actually have a more kind of executive role.
Afzal, do you agree with that? Do you think actually what we should do is just remove any constitutional power whatsoever from the monarchy, just have the Queen as this sort of, symbol of Britishness and the crown, and then, get on with life and move on in a more sort of American tradition?
No, I disagree. I think removing constitutional power from the Queen, then we might as well get rid of the Queen completely. What's the point? The point of the Queen is to ensure that we can have the rule of democracy. How? If you look at the stats, 10 out of the 20 least corrupt countries in the world are constitutional monarchies. With having a monarch there with constitutional power, it means people like the Prime Minister can't be a dictator. If you look at, you're from America, and you will know that when Trump was elected, many people came out on the streets and said, he's not our president. I don't think we'll ever see that in the UK, where people come out and say, she's not our queen.
Emmeline, that's a good point, isn't it? Because if we do look at the actual stats on elected presidents, they make the public less engaged. Turnout in these elections tends to be quite low, and it's often incredibly polarising. If you look at the United States of America right now as one example, there is real unrest, and actually a lot of commentators are saying America faces a threat of civil war.
Yes, I agree. And I think, though, that the problem lies not so much in the system and having an elected official be our leader, our public figurehead, but the idea is more that we're having a conflict of narrative. And I think the same problem is actually bleeding over into the UK. Unfortunately, I'm very sorry about that. But I think that even the Queen is less unifying than she used to be, because people are, I think, debating whether or not the UK is actually a force for good, whether the US is a force for good. That has to do with our ideology, with our philosophy, not with our form of government.
Yeah, and just on that point then, Afzal, the island is a republic with a much celebrated presidency, for example. Surely we could find an equally unifying apolitical figure, just quickly there.
Politicians, presidents, they're politicians, so they will never be unifying like someone who is, away from politics, who's neutral. So you can't ever have a comparison to a queen or a monarch.
Well, that was beautiful. Thank you very much for that, the pair of you. Commonwealth Youth Leader Afzal Pervez and Emmeline McClellan, thank you very much for your time. Now, folks, you have been watching Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes. Thank you very much for your company. The show's on every Saturday and Sunday at 2 p.m, but for now, I'll leave you with the weather. Thank you very much.
OK, looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy and breezy for most, with rain continuing to spread eastwards. Let's take a look at the details. A front sits across the southwest this evening, so you can expect a damp evening there. A little calmer though, still unpleasant at times on the moors, particularly during heavier downpours. Further east, after a relatively dry day, rain will start to affect many parts of the southeast, though it will be largely light. Over in South Wales, after a rather wet day, the rain will ease for a time and it will turn a little calmer as well. Over in the Midlands next, and it'll be a mixed picture there, cloudy and breezy for many, with rain continuing at first, though it will likely turn a little drier by night time, staying mild too. Moving further north, where things stay rather windy in the northeast of England this evening, with a mix of clear spells and showery rain that may be quite heavy in times, as well as being unpleasant. Now, even further north to South Scotland, where it will be changeable this evening. Expect some heavy and blustery showers at times, but also the odd clear and colder spell. Finally, let's look at the details for Northern Ireland. It'll turn a bit calmer and drier for many, though once again short-lived, and heavy showers will push through. For the rest of the night, things will change again as more heavy rain and gusty winds will push up from the south. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Start off your GB News Sunday with Stephen and Anne at breakfast from 6 a.m. At 10, Michael Portillo joins the political correction. From 12 till 6, it's Alistair, Darren and Nana. At 7, join Free Speech Nation for a laugh that won't be cancelled. At 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight, followed by Headliners. That's Sunday on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous